or the translator differently than Swami Chinmayananda. Swamiji uses awareness and consciousness to translate chit. He uses them synonymously. Nisargadatta Maharaj uses them slightly differently. I suspect he's using the word consciousness to translate what in Sanskrit we would say is chitta, the stuff of mind that undergoes change, that forms itself into sense perception, feeling, thought, imagery, etc. Swamiji would call that mind in its various forms. So as we go through the text, understand that there's this subtle distinction between those two. Any thoughts on this? All right, does anyone remember where we were? I think we were, oh, good, great.
We're on 11/20, November 20th.
What page?
Page 15 in the book.
Page 15. And I think we have Vishwa who will read for us.
Sure. This is where we are, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have your mask on?
Yeah, should I take it off to read?
I
Okay.
think it'll be a little
Okay,
clearer
no worries.
if you do, if you don't mind.
No, I can read. Okay, November 20th, 1980, page 15. Maharaj, the principle which can know itself is in the organism. In a worm crawling, it is there because the worm knows itself instinctively. By listening to my talks, you will be transformed back to your original state prior to your birth. Right now, in spite of your present life, it will happen. My present talk is quite different now, at a higher level. Therefore, I do not invite anybody to listen to my present talks. I recommend that nobody should come and listen because they will develop a dispassion for their family or daily life.
All right, let's stop there. So he's quite humorous, but there's a lot of truth to this. So what he's referring to is what we call Shaktipat. Patpadati means to hurl or to like throw a spear. So we have what we would call in Christian terms, the descent of the Holy Spirit. So when we have the great punya, the great merit, the great fortune to be in the presence of a Mahatma, we can feel that presence. And to some degree, our minds are changed. Puneet sent me this wonderful video of a talk with this Western gal. Her name's Kitty something or other. I can't remember her last name. And her mother was a disciple of Ramana Maharshi. And this gal, Kitty, was like 6, 7, maybe a little older, living in the ashram or right close to it. And she talks about, his relationship with the animals and being engaged in people's life. But then she talked about in the hall when he was on his couch. And she says when he would go into meditation, when he would go into samadhi, it was just silence. And at a very deep level, if our minds can enter into that, it starts to change us. The main thing is, it's so clean, it's so pure, it's so peaceful. And remember what I call the ruthless rule of the mind. The mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. And then I usually follow that with thank God, God is the most beloved, or we'd all be screwed. Because that same passion that before had driven us into the world, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, at a very deep level, no, there's another place, there's something richer, deeper, more meaningful. And even if we struggle to go back there, struggle to stay there, that drives our minds towards the infinite. It drives us towards the infinite. And as Maharaj says here, we develop a distaste for the world. Why? Because it just won't give us anything that's enduring or lasting. And the more we clutch at it, the more we grasp at it, the more painful it is. We yearn for that release. We yearn for that peace. Any thoughts on this? The other piece of this is actually, as Swamiji would say, it's an evolution, not a revolution. We're all coming home to God, to the Son. One of my favorite sayings of St. Augustine, thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in thee. Going on.
Language, energy, and vital breath energy should merge and stabilize. Otherwise, if you allow them to go outward, they will be dissipated. If you want peace, stabilize at that point where you started to be. Stay put there. Om is the unstruck sound, the unpronounced word. You don't respond to my talks. You have not been able to perceive the nature of your consciousness. Consciousness is something like the drama of a play acting. You are unsupported. You have no support at all. The birth, the parents, all this is illusion. Taking the body as oneself is the accident. If you don't cling to the body as your identity, everything is all right. When beingness forgets itself, that state is para Brahman. This knowingness is not your true state. It is the outcome of the food essence body and you, the absolute, and not that.
Yes. So you are the absolute. You are not the body. There is no other bondage than the deeply rooted conviction that I'm the body, or the body plus the personality. What is its cause? This mystery of Maya, spiritual ignorance. But you can cross over. What needs to be done? Shravana. First, we hear the truth. Mananam, we think about it. See how logical it is. Then nididhyasana, long and continuous meditation. Meaning, once we get a taste of this deep introversion of the mind, what Swamiji used to call tuning up, being in samadhi, doing our best to remember to live from that place as much as frequently as we can. This is what Jesus meant when he said, I have overcome the world. Doesn't mean he beat it all up. But his mind was so introverted, he was in what we would call a full state of yoga. But the mind no longer extroverted into the world. Next one, going on.
November 21st, 1980. Maharaj, whatever I had thought earlier has now changed. What is happening now is that even the slightest touch of individuality has completely disappeared, and it is consciousness as such which is spontaneously experiencing. The result is total freedom. All the time, there was complete conviction that it was consciousness which was experiencing, but that I, which the consciousness was experiencing, was there. Now that has totally disappeared. Therefore, whatever happens in the field of consciousness, I, who am there before consciousness, am not concerned in any way. The experience is of consciousness experiencing itself. Nevertheless, understand what consciousness is, even if consciousness is not an individual. The basis and source of the consciousness is in the material. What I say is still in the conceptual world, and you need not accept it as truth. Nothing in the conceptual world is true.
Let's stop there. This is really rich stuff. So there is one level where we know that the I thought is an illusion. You hear me say over and over again, no personal sense of self is real. So if you see it arise, it's ever before you, you can let it go. You can let it go. So what Maharaj is saying, it no longer arises for him. And this idea of my consciousness, your consciousness, or my mind, your mind, gone. When we study Yoga Vasishtha, there's a very, very famous section, Saptagyana Bhumikas, the 7 stages of knowledge. And there's a very interesting conversation that happens between a disciple and Ramana Maharshi. This disciple obviously had studied Yoga Vasishtha and says, Bhagawan, to which of the 7 stages of knowledge does the jnani belong? And Bhagawan says, to the 4th. And if you read it, it says, knowledge of your self-nature. And then the disciple says, if that be true, then why have 3 other stages superior to it been articulated in the scripture? Very interesting question. And Bhagawan says, these are not stages of bondage and release. Liberation happens at the 4th stage. These have to do with the experiences of the realized soul. Non-apprehension of the world, constant immersion in bliss. We will go through them when we study Yoga Vasishtha. And he said, they are not to be achieved by will or effort. In fact, if the person is making efforts, they're not yet a jnani. They're karmic. more and more stuff falls away. So what Maharaj is indicating as he nears the end of his prarabdha, meaning the body's existence in this world, it gets thinner and thinner. Best example I can give. If you all look up, you can see the fan turning. It continues to turn because juice is going through it. The life force, electricity. David, would you reach behind you and turn off the fan? Now, no juice, but it's still turning. That's what happens post-realization. No juice anymore, but inertia keeps it going. Now look what's happening to the fan. It gets slower and slower. Keeps turning, keeps turning. So the equipment of the jnani gets thinner and thinner, more transparent. Guess what happens when the fan stops? Oh, you die. So when I first met Swamiji in 1975, he had so much charisma, so much energy, and there was a personality there. But I told us not to pay attention to it. But that last couple years of his life, there was almost nothing left. But then it was like a clear lens. The Shakti just went through him. So empty. Any thoughts on this?
Jim, could you please clarify something? In his talks, he uses I and consciousness. He's not using them as synonyms, right? He's using them differently.
Well, we have to parse it out, because does he mean ahamkriti, the I thought, or is he talking about being itself, aham?
Because I am consciousness, right?
Yes. Well, he wouldn't use the word the I am consciousness, I think he means, remember when you have those moments of deep insight, the technical term is pratyabhignana, meaning when we tune up the mind and you introvert your attention, you have that insight, oh, there's nothing there. I am that pure, grounded being. That awareness is in mind. That insight. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Still doesn't affect the self. The self doesn't get realized. Or we can say the self is always realized. He talks about before you were born, before ignorance, you were.
But realization occurs to the mind, right?
That's what, yes.
So the self, in that sense, is never realized because there's no mind matter.
Well, but think, are you you?
Yeah.
How do you know you are you? What is the instrument for the direct experience of the self?
It's the self.
The self itself.
Yeah.
But the great cosmic joke is you've already had that.
Right.
Yeah, you gain nothing new. Or as Yoga Vasishtha says, both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. But this recognition, this aha, this buddhi becoming buddha, doesn't affect the self. But it sure changes a person's experience. This is unclear, just put it on the shelf. Just put it on the shelf for now. Keep tuning up the mind. Keep introverting. All right, going on.
I lost where I was.
What's the disease?
Thank you. Okay. Once the disease was diagnosed, the very name of the disease started various thoughts and concepts. Watching those thoughts and concepts, I came to the conclusion that whatever is happening is in the consciousness. I told the consciousness, it is you who is suffering, not I. If consciousness wants to continue to suffer, let it remain in the body. If it wants to leave the body, let it. Either way, I am not concerned. All kinds of things were happening, thoughts and experiences, and they were credited to my account. But once I have seen what it is, all those account books have been burned, and I no longer have any account. How amusing is it to see someone who thinks of himself as an individual, who thinks of himself as a doer or achiever. Whatever is happening and the experiencing of the happening takes place in this consciousness when the I am arises.
Yes. So here he means the I am thought. Yes. So the idea here is who is the sufferer. So I think he died of throat cancer. And so he's going through pain in the body, which of course activates the mind.
Oh.
But he was so unidentified with the body. What concern have I for that? Let it do what it does. I love the image that Krishna says. He says, in one tiny corner of my infinite being is the whole creation. Now again, evolution, not revolution. Just like every river flows to the ocean, you too will go through the process that he's described. Going on.
November 24th, 1980. Questioner, if there is no difference between what is prior to birth and what is after death, there is no difference. Is there any reason for attempting to learn who we are now? Isn't it all the same? Maharaj, the light coming from the sun and the sun itself, is there any difference? Questioner, the only difference is what happens in the middle? Maharaj, whatever happens between birth and death is also an expression of the consciousness only. Even in the realm of consciousness, you pass the time entertaining various concepts. What else are you doing? Questioner, is Maharaj playing with various concepts? Maharaj, no, it is the consciousness. It plays by itself. Questioner, does Maharaj's consciousness play even though he is detached from it? Maharaj, consciousness is not private property. It is universal.
Yes, yes. So one of the things that I just thunder, if you really analyze any level of what you think is individuality, you cannot find an individual. If you look at this thing called a material body, where do you stop and the other person starts? There's all sorts of stuff in the middle. You know, where did the matter come from? Is it my breath or your breath? Do we own the breath? If you take an apple and you eat the apple, when does it quit being an apple and become your body? We're constantly shedding material. If you were a shark and you looked at a human being, you'd see this egg-shaped thing, which is the electromagnetism that you're emanating. So much of what we see as individuality is just optics. We go to the mind. Where do your thoughts come from? Can you find a thing called my thoughts? So let's say, oh, I get triggered by my trauma. Where did your trauma come from? Stuff handed to you by parents and grandparents. One of the things I just find so fascinating about the political environment in which we live, we see right before our eyes. If you say it loud enough and long enough, everybody believes it. Isn't that what's going on? Can these people say this is my thought? No. Because there's no such thing as my mind. It doesn't exist. Well, what about my vasanas? These are like my special vasanas. Well, today's thoughts, feelings, and actions are the result of vasanas, which I accrued from yesterday's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Where did that come from? The day before and the day before. Flip into another lifetime, day before, day before. Meaning, where's the first vasana? The Big Bang? Can you say it's yours? So there's nothing real called an individual. So the total mind, what he's calling consciousness, Hiranyagarbha, prajna, doesn't belong to any individual person. Many of us, the more we meditate, and as it were, the emptier we become, the more you feel and experience the thoughts and feelings of others as if they were your own. You know, you're riding on the bus and all of a sudden you think about hating your wife and you haven't got one. Then you look around and you see some guy 2 seats down, what? Oh, I know what he's thinking, you know. Wasn't my thought at all. Well, isn't that copping out? What, are you not taking responsibility for your own issues? You deal with it all the same anyway. It's not you. Who cares where it came from? It's just, to use his word, consciousness. It's just mind. It's just Prakriti. When he talked about it being the material world, we've had that image in Gita. Just Nama Rupa, name and form. Brahma Satyam Jagam Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world is Mithya. Daniel used the term conditioned reality. It's just consciousness appearing as name and form. Going on.
Questioner. Though we understand this, sometimes it seems confined to a body. Maharaj, you are trying to understand with the intellect. Just be. When I tell you that you are that dynamic manifest knowledge, you are everything. What else do you want? Questioner. I am aware that I came here because Maharaj gives me the mirror. But this time he is showing me that I am my own mirror. Maharaj, that is why you should not stay for long.
Right.
Questioner, after we leave here, what are we to do? Maharaj, it is up to you. If you abide in consciousness, everything will be happening spontaneously. If you are still at body-mind level, you will think that you are doing something. If you really abide in what I say, you become one with yourself. Then people will be serving you. They will fall at your feet. Whatever is necessary for you will happen. Activities are bound to happen. Consciousness can never remain inactive. It'll always be busy. That is its nature.
Yes, so Shiva is ever wedded to his Shakti. So if you look at the Shiva Lingam, I won't go get one, but you have the lingam, the Shiva Lingam, a penis. And it's always in the yoni, which is a womb, vagina. But you can't pull them apart. Shiva Lingam is always in the yoni, ever wedded. Krishna calls it the womb of all manifestation. So what you have always, what he's calling consciousness, Shakti, Saguna Brahman with qualities, Prakriti, nature, is co-eternal with the self. And the point he's driving at is it's a cosmos, meaning it's organized and intelligent. It's not a chaos. You don't wake up this morning and light travels at 187,000 miles per second. You don't flip the switch on the wall and all of a sudden balloons come down. All nature is synchronous. It's all connected. And it's intelligent. So what Maharaj is saying, you don't need to do stuff in life, yet it will be done. You don't go grow, hair, grow, hair, grow. Yet
How about
At
paying
least-
bills?
See what happens. See what happens.
Like wake up and pay bills, Jim.
Mhm.
No, I was saying you do stuff in a way, right? You have to wake up and do the dishes, pay the bills, make the bed, right?
If you don't do the dishes, what happens?
Fruit flies.
And then what happens? You suffer. And your mind responds to the suffering. Just like if you sit there long enough, you're going to have to pee. And then what are you going to do? Go pee, like Mark did.
Second old man. More often.
But the point is, we are impelled into activity. But you don't say, I'm not going to pee today, I'm just over it. So you will act, or that particular form will act according to its nature. It's all God, and it's all good. Is that useful?
Yeah.
Going on.
When you come here, you have certain expectations, certain aspirations, but after listening to my talks, you lose all that. Questioner. Even when I have an intuitive understanding of this, what is this reluctance to give up all that I am not?
Ooh, that's good. So we hear it. One of the things that's very interesting, people have all these doubts and questions that come to satsang. And then, oops, they go away. And they're out there, you get back in your car. Oh, I forgot to ask that. What about that? We don't resolve your questions, we just get rid of the questioner. And now the most important question. I absolutely believe what the scriptures are saying. I absolutely believe what Maharaj is saying. Why can't I give up the world? Let's see what the answer is.
Maharaj, you have not stabilized firmly in that understanding. Your conviction should be such that no question at all should arise in future about that. For example, a person is dead and has been cremated. It is all over. Is there any question about that? Like that, it will be all over. Questioner.
But we have this stupid thought. The best parallel I can draw is the strange nature of alcoholism. Alcoholism is a twofold disease. There's the physical allergy, such that when you start to drink, it sets up the phenomenon of craving. If we knew that and just said, okay, it's like having an allergy to peanuts or shellfish, I won't eat those.
Mm-hmm.
But for the real alcoholic, there's this strange idea, maybe this time it won't burn me. It's an insane thought. But if you've known an alcoholic, that's exactly what we do. Maybe this time it won't totally trash me. And then it's that crazy thought. How many times have we taken the world as real? With the result of, and then the scriptures say, get out. We do. And then the insane thought comes. Yeah, but this is really important. Pick up the rock again. That's our craziness. That's Maya. avidya. Only an act of grace can save a person from that.
Where do you get this act of grace, Jim?
Keep emptying out. Keep letting your mind abide in the self. Do your best to remember, nevi, nevi, not this, not this. When we study Viveka Chudamani, Shankara says success in spiritual endeavors is entirely due to the degree of the qualifications of the student, becoming adhikari. Other factors such as time and place, while important, are fundamentally secondary. Then he has a list. And whenever Shankara makes a list, what order does he put it in?
Most important first.
Most important first. What's first on the list?
Viveka.
And what's number 2?
Vairagya.
You got it, girl. The firm conviction in the intellect that Brahman alone is real and that the phenomenal world is illusion is known as discrimination between the real and the unreal. Most important. Doesn't mean we've had the direct experience, but we are clear, firm conviction in the intellect. That inspires us to practice the second. That desire doesn't mean we've accomplished it overnight. To give up all attachments to anything perceived through the senses, gross and subtle. And that desire to give up all identification, starting from the body up to and including the form of Brahma, the creator, meaning I've given up, I want to be a powerful person. I want to be extra special. I want to be a Mahatma. I was talking with a very dear friend of mine. We have another mutual friend. And she's been in this work as long as I. And she's still unhappy. She's still unhappy. And my friend asked her, what is it that you want? And she says, I want to be like the saints. Sorry, that's not a particularly good goal. Better you should be Ramana. And have no concern for the equipment. That's what he's saying. Going on.
Questioner. What effort do I need to make toward that? Maharaj, effortlessly just be. When the consciousness fully understands the consciousness, will it embrace the body as itself? It is in totality. It is in not going to pick out a fragment of the manifestation and say, I am this. The consciousness expresses itself as does a light. This 5 elemental play is the manifestation of consciousness. The effulgence, the effulgence of consciousness only.
So this 5 elemental play, remember our teaching around what we call the Tanmatras: earth, air, fire, water, and space, Akasha. Remember, that's all connected with perception. Earth is smellability, air is touchability, fire is seeability, water is tasteability, space is hearability. And the idea is we look at the wooden coffee table, it's made of wood. But if you dream about the coffee table, is it made of real wood? No. It's made up of smellability, tasteability, touchability, hearability, seeability. That's the play of this one. It is like a dream. What he's saying is, when the mind sees its own fundamental unreality. Somebody used to say the mind commits harakiri, psychic suicide. You cannot think a real thought. You cannot know anything that's substantive and real. Even the thought I just gave you is not real. Only I is real. Going on.
Jim, I have a question then. So we come here, tune up, and then you go out into the world, but the world doesn't dissolve, Jim. It hasn't like gone away. It doesn't disappear. Has it disappeared for you?
Don't worry about this one's my mistake. You do your own.
Okay.
You see me just at the doorway, ushering you through. When the world has disappeared for you, then you'll know if the world has disappeared for other people. Just have confidence. What I'm giving you is what the scriptures say. Going on.
The play of the five elements will finally merge into the consciousness because it is an outcome of the consciousness. November 25th, 1980, Maharaj. People come here and stay for days, weeks, and even months. The first few days, what they have heard takes root, and that is when they should leave, so that what has taken root will have time to grow and blossom. As soon as the seed takes root, they must go. What has taken root must bloom, must express itself within each heart. Questioner. Maharaja said in this respect that the teachings were his guru's, but the understanding was his. Maharaj, my guru told me that consciousness alone is the guru. All other developments sprouted within me. The fruit should grow on your own plant. I should not sound my understandings in you. I have no use for traditions or traditional language. If you do the slightest research on tradition, you will see that it is all a concept. I am concerned with only one fact. Here I was in my wholeness, not even aware of my awareness. Then suddenly this consciousness sprang up. How did it come about? That is the question which needs investigating. One must understand how clever this fraud of Maya is. First, it shows us our body and makes us believe that we are the body. But the body is nothing but a speck of fertilized sperm, and in that sperm, the consciousness is latent. You see what a fraud it is. The essence of the body is the essence of the food stuff, and this consciousness lies dormant in it from the very beginning. In the state of consciousness is the entire universe. Having seen this, whoever has understood is bound to be quiet, knowing that this is only a transient happening. An enormous structure of concepts being taught to us as knowledge is based on the simple appearance of consciousness.
So what he's basically saying is the Advaita Vedanta is not real. It is a mode of thinking that gets us beyond our thinking. But the tradition itself occurs in mind. But you are not a concept. You are something very real. Going on.
December 5th, 1980. Maharaj, this sickness gave the confirmation that there is no personality, no individuals. Sickness to whom? Sickness is a part of the functioning of the entire manifest dynamic Chaitanya. It is the play of consciousness. My true state is prior to this consciousness. This state does not depend on the consciousness. There is a couplet we sing in bhajans to Chakrapani, Chakrapani. That means that I amness. The life principle, the manifest principle. It is like the cigarette lighter. The gas as such has no light, but its manifestation is the flame. It is full of light, life, energy. Even in the atom and subatom, that energy is there. The functioning of consciousness takes place spontaneously, and one doesn't know what will happen. For instance, I may say something and M will translate it one way, B will translate it another, in whichever way they have understood it. This is the way the process will go on. This Chakrapani is like a flywheel, Lord Krishna said, rotating all beings. That energy which moves all things in the waking state is latent in deep sleep. How long is one unaware of awareness? One doesn't know, but suddenly consciousness arises. Does anyone think along these lines? Is it not amazing that consciousness, which might remain latent for any length of time, suddenly arises spontaneously? Question.
So let's stop there. So that's the word he's translating as consciousness, Chaitanya.
Oh,
Yes. The consciousness of something. So like all the brahmacharis in the Chinmaya mission,
oh yeah.
see, so for example, the Anoop's new name,
Soham Chaitanya.
Soham Chaitanya, the consciousness that I am that. Or Aniket Chaitanya, the consciousness of homelessness, etc. That's the word that he's using. But what Maharaj is indicating is, what is it that draws us to this work, draws us to satsang itself, this yearning within us to come home, that consciousness. I frankly find puberty the best metaphor. Nobody chooses puberty. The body just does it. It's its nature. Now, we make choices because of puberty, most of them pretty bad, but Likewise, as the consciousness, this yearning to come home arises, this spiritual puberty, we choose to study scripture. We choose to associate with other people in a sangha. We choose to come to satsang. We choose to do spiritual practices. But it's as the result of this incredible universal movement, what I call the salvific principle. Yes. Take it easy. Going on.
Questioner, is universal consciousness ever aware of itself as universal consciousness, or does it become aware only when there is a form? Maharaj, awareness is not aware of its awareness. If you get too much involved in what I am saying, you will throw away the books you are writing, everything. Questioner, I will finish the books, then I am finished. Maharaj, to Jean Dunn, you have promised me that you will complete the books. Universal consciousness will not write the books. How will you write the books? Questioner, it will happen spontaneously. December 8th, 1980. Maharaj, I am talking about the consciousness which works through this body at the moment, but which is not visible. The consciousness is not limited to the body, but is universal consciousness. I can't speak of anything else now. A person who is already dead is not worried about anything. Whether the people like it or not, doesn't matter. Perhaps you may be getting some blessings, some benefits from listening to my talks. I don't know. All my actions are the actions of universal consciousness appearing to work through this body. I do not remember something from the past and then act. It is all action in the now.
Yes. So the yogi endeavors to be out of control. And again, the emptier one becomes. There's this sense of there's a puppet master working the body, mind, intellect. The person of wisdom has no idea what they're going to do from moment to moment and doesn't particularly care. An incredible clarity of knowing that what's animating this particular puppet is animating all the rest of creation perfectly. Christians have the prayer, "Thy will be done." That's kind of saying, I pray that the ocean's waves come in and out.
Pointless.
Well, it's an acknowledgement of what is.
Okay.
But you and I foolishly stand on the beach and go like this, thinking it's making the waves go in and out. Going on.
All my actions are the actions of universal consciousness appearing to work through this body. I do not remember something from the past and then act. It is all action in the now. Questioner, where does consciousness come from? Maharaj, It never comes or goes. It just appears to have come. Questioner, why does Maharaj know this and we do not? Maharaj, it is not difficult for you to know also, but with what identity are you asking? Questioner, is it karmic? Can karma be changed? Maharaj, it is all consciousness working, not this one or that one working. It is all consciousness. Questioner, can Maharaj, out of compassion, give me a push into the state of universal consciousness? Maharaj, yes, of course I can do that, but you must listen to me. You must have complete faith in whatever I tell you about yourself, and you must behave accordingly. By nature, I am non-manifest, yet I am manifested, but I am really not manifested. Can you live like that as the non-manifest? As long as the attribute is there, the quality of the attribute, the I am, is there. Therefore, I can speak like this. If it goes away, what happens? The sense of I has come and has gone. That is all. I am not going to die. One who has rejected this identity will understand. Questioner, Maharaj said that he is not going to die? Maharaj, how can one who is not born die? When people first learned about this illness, those who have affection for me came to talk to me or wrote to me, giving advice and medicine. Whatever is to happen will happen. I have no interest. I have no fear, so I don't have to do anything. It is quite in order that those who have affection for me write and come to discuss things with me. I don't listen to them, and that is also quite in order because I am not afraid of anything. You are asking, who am I? And you are not going to get an answer because the one who will get the answer is false. You may have an idea, a concept, and you will think you have found yourself, but it is only a concept. You can never see yourself. Question.
Yes. So they all see the little man sitting on his asana, flapping his jaws, and they think that is Nisargadatta Maharaj. But his experience is I am not that. I am all of this. I am none of this. Going on.
Questioner, what is Satchit Ananda? Maharaj, it is words. You can take it that Satchit Ananda is the limit which your mind can describe of that state which cannot be described. Your true state is non-manifest. The manifestation comes and the words come. The one who experiences Satchit Ananda is there before the experience.
Yes. So remember, everything the scriptures say point, they do not define. Going on.
The next few pages, Jim, have just some photos of Maharaj. And it says the pictures in the following pages depict the various moods of Maharaj as he responds to his questioners in his simple room, which became the place of pilgrimage for seekers from countries the world over. And that says Maurice Friedman describes him as warm-hearted and tender, shrewdly humorous, absolutely fearless, and absolutely true, inspiring, guiding, and supporting all who came to him.
Well, let's stop there again. We'll stop a few minutes early and take up the next section next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Zoomies.